Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. We're a father-son business podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And you know what we discovered the other day? We discovered that we are the number one father-son business podcast that is recorded on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
There
Absolutely
it
number
is.
one in the world. Yes,
That's why we got it on the mugs.
that's right. That's right. If I can ever remember to grab my mug, I'm such a creature of habit. I've got my tribe and purpose Yeti going every day. It takes me a lot to think and change that routine. And routine is such a key element in life. And I think people blow it off and they don't realize it. We talk about it in business. We talk about it as processes and systems. And speaking of those processes and systems, Camden, what's the latest process that you're adapting to?
The latest process that I'm adapting to, well, I got to say, getting an AI cutting my social media clips and cutting my time from whatever 10 hours is down to an hour. So I guess 10%. And getting used to all that extra time and finding productive things to do with it.
Yeah, I'm waiting on that productivity. Let's just
Hey, I was going to say, we're getting into our strategy call a little early in the day. I thought that was in 3 hours, but we could get into
all right.
it.
Well, we could have Mark supervises Mark Donnigan joining us today. Hey, Mark, how you doing, man?
Hey, doing well, guys. Doing well.
Good. And in that sense, strategy call as a CMO, and forgive me, do you call yourself a fractional CMO or?
I'm a guy. It's a great question. Actually, I introduce myself as I build companies. You know,
Mm,
and if you really think about it, that is what you do. When you're driving marketing, when you're working with entrepreneurs, helping them, grow their businesses, like you're building companies, right? So I usually just say, yeah, I build companies, and I do that in the area of like marketing and go to market, and people go, oh wow, like a consultant, right? And I go, yeah, exactly, like a consultant.
isn't,
So
isn't it funny how we have to, as humans, we have to put things into a box that we know?
yeah,
You know, it's like, yeah,
yeah,
okay, yes, you could call it a coach, you could call it a
it,
consultant, but I'm different.
yeah,
So how are
yeah,
you different?
yeah, yeah.
How
Yeah.
are you
So,
different? Sorry, Mark.
yeah. Okay. Well, that's a question for me.
Yes.
So, yeah. Well, I think there's a great, I love what you said in the intro. We're all learners here. And I'll tell you, that is just the story of my professional advancement, and frankly, just in life, even. Um, I don't, I just always was the curious, kid, I guess. And my mom used to take me to the library when I was a kid, and I loved it. I mean, that I wasn't one of those kids that's like, mom, how quickly can we get out of here? And I was finding books of stuff. Some things I was really interested in, and other topics and areas that I went, wow, that looks cool. I'm going to read about that. So I've been a lifelong learner. The way that I'm different in terms of how I position, and it really does come back to describing what I do.
Mm.
Um, I think business has gotten so complex. Obviously, the marketplace is very dynamic right now, which is a polite way to say, for some it's incredibly challenged. For others, there's business, but you got to fight for every dollar. And there's a handful of markets and businesses that are just on fire, right? So I'm sure your listeners, there's probably all three areas are represented. Um, but it is so dynamic that to say I am a virtual CMO, that is, I'm a CMO that you can hire to come in on, kind of a part-time basis, and I can work with your team, or I can work with you as a founder. Yes, functionally, that's what I do. I work with just a very small number of companies, like literally one, two, maybe I have a third that I might be doing, kind of more advising, or you might say coaching, which is to say I'm not getting my hands in the dirt. But I work with a very small number of companies. But when you step back and you say, but wait a second, Mark, every engagement, you're actually touching sales, and you're actually really getting involved in the area of, what I like to think of as go to market, which is how a company markets, how it actually sells its product, the positioning, even down into, in some cases, the product itself. What is the product? Does it have the right set of features and functions? And does it, meet the needs of the market? All of that is what's required to grow a company, right? And I think where some consultants fall down, and in my observation, because especially now, there's a lot of churn in the market, and through COVID, there's plenty of folks who went, I kind of like this work for myself, work from anywhere. And, there was a lot of opportunities. So it was relatively easy to jump into, and I'm using the air quotes, consulting, right? I'm going to be a consultant. Well, now it's getting more challenged. And I'm finding that my peers, the consultants who are kind of struggling a bit, are the ones who are just basically selling like, hey, hire me. I can come in and be your CMO for hire. Mm-hmm. And candidly, there's a lot of other good folks out there who can also do the job, maybe even do it a little bit better, or they're a little cheaper, or there's some twist to it. Right. And so, I just, and I stumbled into this, but you asked the question, how am I different? And I just don't start out by, you have a marketing problem, let me bring all of my, 20 plus years of marketing experience to your marketing problem. I start out and say, well, ultimately you have a revenue problem, or, maybe it's not a problem, but you're looking to grow faster, or maybe a particular revenue stream is slowed down, or, you're seeing a market really shift and you're saying, wow, what are we going to do here? Maybe we need to look at our marketing. So they engage me, and I usually come in the first day, say, yeah, there's things we can do in marketing. We're going to get to that, but we need to fundamentally, look at a much bigger picture. So.
Do you think, did you make that kind of choice to brand yourself that way and to brand your business that way as a personal choice or a business choice? And what I mean by that is personal, like if I would say, like I describe myself as a coach because I also coach rugby, so it's really easy to just say coach.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Just my personality, right?
Yeah,
whereas business-wise, that might not be the thing that communicates it the best and, for the branding, messaging, that kind of stuff. So which one was it?
Ooh, that's it. It's actually a good question. And I have to say, it's kind of one of those where I suppose I could do a little introspection and say, well, I had this, I met with myself and we decided, it's like, that's a little weird. That clearly is not, how it happened. And yet there was definitely, and there is some clarity behind why I call myself what I do. And even, I kind of started out, and I wasn't making light of the fact, but it's like, yeah, virtual CMO on my website, for SEO purposes, you'll see those words, virtual CMO. But when I'm face to face, I just say I build companies, and so I guess I arrived at that, partially as a differentiation point. I'm a huge believer in a tactic called category design. And category design, it just its most basic fundamental, foundation is when you position yourself, you might be in a very big crowded market, but you find a way to position yourself as unique and special and different, which almost always, in fact, always means that you're going to greatly narrow your total addressable market. But that's the power of category design. So, for example, I actually differentiate myself even one step further, is that I say I build companies. And then generally the person I'm talking to, is like, oh, well, what kind of companies? Or they ask some question like that. And I say, good question. Very specific. I primarily work with, or almost exclusively, companies that are doing $5 to $10 million, or are scaling into that, or are scaling out of that range. The founders are technical. It's always B2B. I do not work with B2C companies. And they usually are in kind of one phase of their marketing team development. One is they're either just really starting to build a marketing team and they're saying, wow, we need someone to kind of help us, bootstrap this, jumpstart it. Can you help us do that? That's one phase. Second phase is they've had an aborted attempt, like it, they hired somebody, maybe they built a small team and it just didn't work out. And they brought in someone else and that didn't work out. And now they're kind of scratching their head going, we need someone to help us, or they have maybe one or two marketers, but now they need to bring in a leader. They're like, you know what, we got some people who are doing pretty good work, but they don't have the strategic piece. They don't have the overall end-to-end experience. Can you come in, help them and then build it? And so I'm very specific in, no, I don't sell to anybody who has a business. No, I'm not, oh, wow, you're an $800 million company. Ooh, this is a gold mine for me. In fact, one of my clients actually fits outside of, this profile I just described, company I do some work with, and, they fit outside of it. They're actually considerably larger in revenue. And in the first call, I specifically said, this is my profile and I'm happy to be talking with you, but I don't actually work with companies of your size. And the response I got back was, yeah. That's exactly why we're talking to you, because we need fresh thinking. We want, in other words, like, yes, we know that, I went, okay, as long as this is all known and as long as you know what you're signing up for, then we can keep talking, and we've had a very nice relationship. So
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Tribe and Purpose.
Are you tired of dealing with the cost of bad leadership? It's time to make a change.
The Green Beret Leadership Program is your key to unlocking the full potential of your team.
By using GBLP to develop leaders in your business, you'll get a proactive and responsible team that embraces challenges, takes calculated risks, and takes action without constant supervision.
Developing great leaders can take a lot of time and energy. And that's why businesses tend to opt for the trial by fire and the school of hard knocks path to leadership. The truth is that wastes time and money. And folks, there's never enough of either one of those, and puts lots of extra stress on your leadership team.
Oh yeah, and that stress has lots of bad outcomes for your team. Poor leadership drives away your quality talent, and the longer you wait to fix the problem, the more talent you're going to lose and the more money you're going to lose.
With the Green Beret Leadership Program, you can use battle-tested leadership principles of the Green Berets to develop great leaders in your team faster than with the School of Hard Knocks. You'll see changes in just a few short weeks.
And the longer you wait to take action, the more damage poor leadership can do and will do to your business.
Learn more about the impact of GBLP, that's the Green Beret Leadership Program, can have on your business, and schedule your free coaching call with the Green Beret coach. That's me, folks, Otis. Now at findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP. I'll say it again, findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP, or you can click the link in the description below. And you've touched on a couple of things. And one, I love that attitude. And I as a business owner, founder for a couple of businesses, I could see that sort of approach and saying, but I want that kind of new business energy brought into my team. The other thing I wanted to touch on and maybe throw out as a discussion topic is the whole commodity sort of thing that you could easily become as, hey, I'm another marketer. Hey, I'm another coach. Hey, I'm another consultant. And it's a race to the bottom. How did you set yourself up to differentiate yourself so that you're not yet another commodity in the market?
Very good question. And I describe it this way. Again, I don't know. I guess, with age, there gets to be a little bit of humility, where it's like when I was younger, I thought I was so smart. Everything that worked out, it's because, I'm a genius. I'm brilliant. Then you get older and you kind of look back and you say, well, certainly, yeah, I had to do some things, but reality was the path sort of unfolded through serendipity and whatever else. So that is to say that 3 different times in my career did I venture into this, call it consulting. The first time was now, oh, wow, more than 20 years ago, almost 25 years ago. And it was, I think a lot of people can relate to this. It was purely stopgap. One job ended. I didn't exactly have something lined up. I had a relationship from a former employer that said, hey, you got some time, maybe you help us out here, there, whatever. And it was basically just being a temp worker, and hey, it was awesome because guess what? For the 2 or 3 months in between my next thing, put some money in the bank account and everything was good. Right. But for like about 6 weeks, I thought, whoa, this is cool. Maybe if I could find 2 other companies. And, so I had the dream of being a consultant and then very quickly got a full-time offer. And it's like, yeah, that's done.
And that's the end state of most consultants. I mean, that's where
it is. And
right?
Yeah, it is. And so that was like my first, stopover in my consulting career. The second was I don't know, 8 or 10 years later, I guess. I guess it would have been almost exactly 10 years later, and very similar. Company unfortunately, ran out of cash, and so all of a sudden it's like, oops, like, okay. But this time I had a lot more contacts, and I also was really fortunate in that I'd been a part of some pretty significant technology companies that were great references. And so I now had a few people seeking me out. The first time it was just, basically a previous employer that, was like, hey, if you want to make a few extra bucks, come work for us, you can do a few things. Like, okay, cool. Second one was more like, now I could actually make a go of this. And I did for 3.5 years. Basically replace my income, maybe even, some months made slightly more, and, but working on my own terms. And I felt like, wow, that's where I got my first glimpse of this independent consulting thing. Like I did it for 3 years, and it's not like my income significantly dropped, and, I gained freedom and, started taking my wife around on trips, business trips, whatever. And it's like, this is kind of cool.
Sitting on the beach with your laptop.
Well, that's way overblown. That's for 23-year-olds on Instagram, I guess. Shirtless with a martini, with a picture of the Ferrari in the background. Yeah, that wasn't me. I jest, but not really. But what happened there? So again, I'm going to get to my current, like the third, the third. So what happened there is one of my clients, basically had just raised some money. I was a part of that, in that I was driving the early business, and I saw the opportunity, and they said, Mark, we want you to join full time. And this is the big dilemma that a lot of consultants fall into is, you start working with a client loves your work, and they're like, it's time for you to join full time, And so I did decide to join, had a great run, actually ran marketing and business for more than 7 years. So that was successful. Then right at the start of the pandemic, things, shifts started happening, and all of a sudden I found myself in a, again, similar situation. What am I going to do this time? And this time, what I learned was the progression from my first phase, where it was literally, I was just a temp worker. That's it. I mean, and even if I was working full time, I wouldn't have even replaced my salary, so it's kind of like, okay, this is not sustainable. The second was like, okay, I replaced my salary, even, depending how you looked at it, gave myself a slight raise, not a lot, but, like, hey, but I was still trading time for money. It's still, if I said, hey, I want to make 30% more, 50%, I want to double my income. I would have basically had to have doubled the time I spent, and that's not sustainable, so don't want to do that. So the third time was where I put some real serious thought and intention behind this whole idea of, look, what are people looking for? They actually don't care how much time I spend doing what they need. They care about the result. That's what they care about. And so if I can deliver the result, the fact that I may need to spend 20 hours a week delivering that result, or I might be able to deliver that in 5 hours, at the end of the day, they do not care. And as long as you choose your clients correctly, and as long as your framing of how you work doesn't represent, so for example, if your framing is all about, I'm going to come in and you're going to get me 20 hours a week, and that's well, you've set an expectation. So now you probably better be able to defend your 20 hours a week, even if they're not asking for timesheets, but if you instead reframe it and say, look, here's what I've done. Here's my track record. Here's my assessment of what you need. Here's what I'm going to do for you. And here's the outcome you can expect. Does that sound good? Oh, that would be wonderful. And here's what it's going to cost. Okay, we can make that work. Now, nowhere in that scenario does it say, I'm tagging this amount of time to this outcome. And this is where coaches and consultants get tripped up all the time. Mm-hmm. And so this is why either the consultant is just on this, they're lucky enough to have a steady flow of clients, but it just feels like never ending. And the minute they stop, the income stops, right? Because they largely position to time equals, some financial outcome rather than result, for some, monetary compensation is what the client gets. And so that I put a lot of thought into and a lot of, careful positioning.
There's a great book, and I'll let you go after I just make this comment. There's a great book called Value-Based Fees that my dad gave to me.
Yep.
10,
Alan Weiss, I think,
yeah,
right?
I think it is Alan Weiss, without turning around, because it's right behind me.
I have it's there you go. You're reading the books on my bookcase.
There you go.
And I do read these books.
Yes,
well, no, so actually, speaking of all those books back there, that's one thing that I'm really curious about. If we talk about being a lifelong learner, you said you really connect with that. What was it that drove you towards business and even to this specific area of business? Because I'm guessing not all of those books are business and marketing back then, even though probably a lot of them.
Yeah. Actually, 95% of them are. I mean, they're related. They may be about, more effective writing, or they may be about strategy or positioning, but they are business. Yeah, I actually do not read fiction. Not because I wouldn't enjoy it, but I just don't have the time. So if I'm going to read, and nowadays
I'm the same way. If I'm going to read something, it's I want to get something that I can actually apply.
Yeah. Now, most evenings you'll find me at least for 1 hour sitting with my wife watching some show on Netflix that we're going through. So look, I get my entertainment, but I just I get it more, through video.
All right. I got to do a show and tell while you're talking.
Okay.
But so even if a lot of them being, marketing and or in just business and strategy, there's a lot of different ways you could take that, you could read all of those books and take a lot of different roads from them.
Yeah. So I would say that, I've been a lifelong reader, and I think you started your question by saying, or maybe the gist was, how did you get into that, or, and I'll tell you, I can remember, really when it began. There was two points in my life that just stick out, like, wow, like those books really set me on a path that I'm on today, and it's a pretty wonderful path, So in other words, I look at that with fondness, and very good. The first book was when I was 12 years old. And this is I've been talking about this a fair amount recently. It's funny because it didn't anchor how significant this book was until just a couple years ago. But my uncle, who was not a particularly classically educated person, very smart, but this isn't someone who, had multiple degrees and, all the fancy credentials. At 12 years old, he gave me a book on programming computers with the basic programming language. Now, I'm old enough. I won't say what year that was, but let's just say that these were different kinds of computers than we have now. Like I found my school's one Apple II. It was in the math classroom. But I'm 12 years old. He gives me this book, and it was almost like a programming book for dummies. I remember it being like illustrated with kind of funny characters and all. So it was very easy for like a 12-year-old to read. And my mind was blown. I could write text and a computer would do something. I mean, I was just enthralled and immediately sought out where I could find a computer. Now, here's the ironic thing. My dad was working for Hewlett Packard at the time, HP. Now, he was in the clean room building chips, so microprocessors. So, and my dad's an engineer, but an electrical engineer, but he wasn't doing software and all that kind of stuff. So my dad was, of course, very supportive, and, he would bring home computer, HP, this huge portable computer thing must have weighed 40 or 50 pounds. It was huge. It was literally a suitcase, had a handle on it, but I couldn't even lift it up as a 12-year-old. It was like so heavy, But that book just blew my mind, and it set me off on a whole path of learning to program. Mm-hmm. And that took me into this whole, down this computer science path, which is where ultimately when I started in college, I went into a pretty good computer science program until I decided I wanted to be a rock star. I dropped out. Oh, my dad loved that one. And I went to music school. So no, I do not have a computer science degree. It's really funny in certain circles. I don't do it anymore, but I used to. I had very careful language. I would say my formal education is computer science. Notice I did not say I have a degree. But anyway, so that was a really significant book that just set me off on this whole path. And, I suppose we could have a whole interview about, how that transformed me. The second book was when I was, I think, 20, and I'm working my way through college. And this actually was when I was in computer science at Colorado State University, which at the time was a pretty top, computer science program. Mm-hmm. And I got a book by Zig Ziglar on selling, and my mind was blown. You mean I can write my own paycheck? I mean, you mean I can just walk out my door, and by talking to people, I could come home with like I could decide how much money I want to bring home? My mind was blown, and I became a student of sales. And it was when I was 20 years old that I ultimately decided business was where I wanted to go. And it was largely as a 20-year-old, like, well, I want to make money. I want a cooler car. I want more stuff, So it was, it's not like it was altruistic motives, it was just, I don't want to make $6 an hour like all my friends, which back then was actually like pretty good. I remember I had a friend working at a grocery store. He was like $7 an hour. And I'm like, whoa, $7 an hour. That's amazing. 20, it was a long time ago. Right. But yeah, those two books, just completely revolutionized.
I promised you a show and tell. So here is Miss Suzanne's college marketing book, and let's just say that it was the first edition not printed on stone. So yeah, I've been thinking
Step
about
one is just chapter 1, have a brochure. Chapter 2, knock on doors.
Yeah, exactly. Wear a nice suit when you knock on doors, right? Yeah.
So I've shared this on a few podcast interviews, and I don't talk about this very widely, but I actually did in my mid-20s spend a couple of years selling cars. Like, whoa, okay.
You went full used car salesman?
Oh, no. I worked for a Toyota dealership, and in a very small town, and this is always my qualifier. In a very small town, because you couldn't do business the high pressure, big city way, So it was, people would come, hang out, drink coffee. You'd be sitting there for 40 minutes before they'd be like, well, I suppose, let's go see what you got on the lot. You got that new Camry in, it's like, I had a great time. But I started this is where I learned about newsletter marketing is, and I mean, and again, this goes way back, this is not like just like 10 years ago. And I started producing a newsletter, and I built a small mailing list. And and by the way, I actually sold a few cars as a result of just staying in contact with my customers. And then they would refer to a neighbor or family member or friend or somebody. And, and I kind of went, whoa, this, like, there's something to this whole marketing thing. Like, this actually works. So
love it.
Yeah, there you go. The ex car salesman, virtual CMO. Oh boy, my clients are going to love that.
I wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit, talking about, go to market strategies and, those really like growth focused companies and, talking some like companies with, like industry disruptors, I guess is the best word for it. What is your little bit of a process or philosophy when it comes to looking at an industry disruptor versus a bad idea? And what I mean is there's always this like, why don't they do it this way? And it's like, sometimes there's a really long list of why they don't do it that way. What's your little bit of a thought process?
Yeah. So I have been involved working in Silicon Valley and startups since like 2006, really. And I've seen the whole, kind of evolution. Actually, I was even involved in kind of the internet 1.0. So, 98, 99, I was a part of what we called then e-services, which is basically digital. Now we call it digital transformation, but back then it was like e-services, but anyway. And so I've seen this, this whole transition, and there's a couple things, that happen with ideas. One is the shift of with the development of the cloud, and just technologies in general. It's really almost possible today. And I always start with the working assumption that whatever you want to build can be built, including flying rockets to Mars. I mean, okay, we haven't done it yet, but I don't think there's too many people, if you're following, SpaceX and Elon Musk, that think that, no, it's just a matter of when it's going to happen, like we can do that. So when you start from that premise, and by the way, this isn't just because, I'm a tech optimist, this is just looking at reality. Like, Mark Zuckerberg and a handful of, 19-year-olds can code Facebook and build, and by the way, they were doing that now, 16, 17 years ago. So think about today, how much, easier it is to do something like that. So we're no longer in a situation, generally speaking, where there's product risk or technology risk, but there's market execution risk. And so when someone comes to me, a founder contacts me or somebody makes a comment like, oh, you should really, talk to this company, they're just going to crush in this category, or they're going to kill the incumbent here, or, they're just so much better. I always just start with yep, I'm sure they are. I'm sure they actually are better. And in most cases they are, so you go do a little bit of research, you dig around, you go, yeah, they actually are. But I very quickly get to, but do they have any clue how to engineer the market? Now that is a very different question. And usually the answer is, whoa, they don't. Why? Because they have if I build it, they will come mentality. Or they have we're so much better. All we need is for the market to know about us. Yeah. And I'm going to go buy a yacht next to Jeff Bezos, and rarely do founders say that. Some do, some are brazen enough, but rarely do they say those things. But yet you can talk to them and you can pick up that if they are investing in marketing, if they're investing in sales, it's almost like, well, this is just temporary until the market learns about us. And then we're not even going to need sales. And
it's the idea that it's just so much better that once people learn about it'll just be an objective choice. Like, Dad, I've mentioned this quote before of Frank Knight said, like, there's no objective reason to do anything. Don't expect people to see this thing in an objective thing. Like, oh, everyone wants to download that app now. Everyone wants to buy your widget, whatever it is. It's like, no.
Yep. And 100%. And there's some really great examples even today. Facebook launched a Twitter or an X competitor called Threads. Facebook has distribution that 2 billion weekly users, I think. I don't know if it's daily, but it's Facebook, right? Yeah. They have all the engineering resources they've got. So if you're going to bet, if they were just a startup given, and they weren't the brand, and they had everything going for them, you'd be like, where do I send you money? Like, of course I have to invest. You're just going to crush Twitter. Mm-hmm. Threads is like, Zuckerberg's going to take a multi-billion-dollar write down because sure, a lot of people onboarded, a lot of people kind of rooted around and I'll go back to Twitter, or it's just not relevant. Right. And so did they have a better idea? Did they have a better, and again, we could argue, well, but no, they didn't have this feature, that feature. No, but they had everything going for them. And look, they abjectly failed. Right. Mm-hmm. And there is just example after example after example of this. And so you ask the question, how do I assess? The way that I assess a product idea ultimately, or a business idea, is I look at, do the founders understand what it's really going to take to build the market? Mm-hmm. Do they even understand what the market is? And honestly, that's kind of the first place to start. And I find a certain percentage of the time, they don't even have that down, which if you don't know what your market is, then you can hire all the hotshot virtual CMOs in the world and, and go spend a pile on marketing, and you're not going to succeed.
What my follow-up on that is, because a lot of that movement, assuming you do know what your market is, to get that market to move is, fighting that like social inertia of, it's like, I'm already over here. Like that was one of the big things I remember in the Twitter or X and Threads conversation is like, everyone already has X, and that is the biggest barrier to doing anything else, is they already have this thing. Yeah. What's a little bit of not necessarily go all the way in on the strategy of it, but maybe a tip for a business out there who's looking to try to pull away, fight a little bit of that social inertia?
Okay. So this does get into, I mentioned it, a few minutes ago about category design. And I really believe that everybody needs to be intentional about thinking about their market. And if somebody listening has heard about category design or knows about it, there is one point of view which says that category design is only for the big rich companies that are basically already category leaders. If you're a small startup, forget about it. You can't possibly build a category. I don't believe that at all. But I do, but I also understand the realism that if you're a small startup with limited resources, what you can bring to bear to build that category is very different than if you are, a bigger organization. I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? That's easy to understand. But I think you need to be very, very intentional. So where the founder needs to start is be very, very intentional. And it gets back to narrowing your focus. And I'm finding that more and more, this is a scary thing for people to do, because it feels like, but wait a second, I'm trying to grow and you're telling me to like narrow, like you're telling me to like look at a smaller market to sell to. I'm trying to grow my revenues. Like I can't reconcile this, these two things. But what they're missing in that is that when you get incredibly, incredibly focused, now all your messages can be very, very clear to those people who you want to receive those messages. So another great story, and I am just in the moment, I'm blanking out of the name of the company. So, but I will describe what the company does. There was a company that was just recently acquired by one of the big real estate tech platforms, and now I'm blanking out on which one bought it. Oh boy, it's the podcast amnesia. It's like all of a sudden, like, let's see, what's my name again? No. I don't know if that happens to you guys, but all of a sudden it's like cameras go on, mic goes on, and you're like, how come I can't remember?
I always remember all the names. Yes.
just no public math though, Dad.
There you go. Okay. But this is a super great story. So this large real estate platform just bought this company for $500 million, and they are bootstrapped. Do the math.
Yeah.
Those founders, and by the way, they have less than 100 employees.
Oh, they're not buying a beach house. They're buying an island.
Yeah. Now, okay, great for them. Hey, congratulations. That's not the moral of my story. The moral of the story is that what they built was a CRM, customer relationship management system, for realtors. Okay. Now, so what did they do? So if you look at the MarTech stack, there's a guy named Scott Brinker. See, I can remember some names. There's a guy named Scott Brinker who puts out this really awesome, newsletter and about, marketing automation platforms, marketing technology. And I know, and he has a map of like all the various MarTech solutions. And I don't even know how big. I stopped looking at it because it's so massive. There's like 5,000 or more companies on there. I mean, everybody with a better HubSpot, a better Salesforce, a better Marketo, a better, fill in the blank, right? Mm-hmm. And so what did these guys do? These guys came along and said, look, we're not going to sell to everybody. We're just going to build the solution for realtors. And I'm not a realtor, and I don't really know anything about property tech. I just read the press release, and I put this up on my LinkedIn profile. So maybe we should link to that post, because it's a really phenomenal story. And I put it up as the outcome of this company is like, this is category design. They basically said, look, we could build the CRM. We can make it sufficiently generic. We could hire this big sales team, and we could go out and claim this is why we're better than Salesforce. And guess what? They probably would be. It's not too hard to be better than Salesforce, right? And would they have gotten to a $500 million outcome? Probably not. They would have just gotten swept away with 5,000 other entrants who are out there shouting. Instead, they got very, very narrow. They built the company in a strategic way, didn't raise a lot of money, and ka-ching. So I love that story. And there are countless other stories like that just don't get talked about, because even though, those of us on the call, and I'm sure, your audience would be like, wow, that's a fabulous outcome. But, business press wants to read about a $5 billion exit, 500 million.
Right.
That's, but for those of us who are building business and who are really interested in impacting the world, giving jobs to, our families and to people around us, I'm really passionate about there's a different way, to do it. Nothing against, I've been a part of, building the more traditional, heavily funded, and that's just one path, but it's not the only path. So I don't know. That was a little bit of a twist and a windy answer, I think.
Well,
But
and I kind of, where I want to go with a thought I had, something you mentioned earlier, and I think this segues good into very well into what we were just talking about. This unicorn company that just had that phenomenal exit. Is this dilemma that I've seen in organizations a little bit bigger than what you're targeting? Probably in the 30 to 50 million and up. Is these stovepipes that start to happen between a salesman and a marketer. And I see you in that CMO role, especially since you used to focused on that sales side, as that guy that bridges that. Could you talk to us a little bit about that interesting? I don't know if dichotomy is the right word in this, but that competition between the salesman and the marketer. Talk to us a little bit about that.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Evergood Adventure Wines.
Our loyal listeners know Evergood's founder, Matthew Hexter, and our good friend from his appearances on the show that have never disappointed. And Evergood Adventure Wines doesn't disappoint either.
No, it doesn't. Evergood is a craft winery from Colorado that makes wine from lemons, not grapes.
That's right. Picture this, adult lemonade.
Oh yeah, perfect for your next backyard barbecue or hanging out with friends at the beach or the pool. No need to drink a warm red grape wine when it's 100 degrees out or much hotter here in Tucson. Evergood over ice is the perfect refreshment for a hot summer day.
And they come in a variety of flavors, including lemon, strawberry, lime, my favorite for margaritas, grapefruit, and watermelon, which comes in a cool pouch, by the way. These non-carbonated wines check all the boxes: gluten-free, vegan, low sugar, and low in sulfites. Best of all, they taste damn good, and they have fun names too.
Yeah, like their OG lemon wine called Skierpy. Yeah, y'all heard that one right, Skierpy. And I'll tell you, Skierpy is also one of my favorites.
Evergood now ships to 41 states, so you can order your lemon wines online at evergoodadventurewines.com.
Plus, Matthew is being kind enough to offer 20% off for all of our listeners. Just use promo code CAM-OTIS at checkout to get 20% off and start enjoying these amazing lemon wines.
So y'all go to evergoodadventurewines.com. Evergoodadventurewines.com. That's a mouthful, folks. I'm going to say it the third time. Evergoodadventurewines.com, or click the link in the description in the show. Click buy now to redeem your Cam and Otis Show exclusive discount.
The divide, right?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
First of all, in the organization, I'll just say it really plain. I'm answering the question by telling you in my experience, the organizations that I'm in, there is no battle, there is no wall between sales and marketing, which is to say that you cannot row the boat, say that we're all in the same boat. And yet, boat meaning we're in the same business, but too bad that your side of the boat is taking on water. I'm glad my side of the boat is dry. Like the boat's going down, so it's all hands on deck. And I think just fundamentally, there's some organizational things that ultimately happen at the top in addressing this, because let's face it, if the CEO either sets up a dynamic or just allows the dynamic to go on between sales and marketing sort of fighting or being at odds with each other, then that right there is the root of the problem, right? And in my experience, it's pretty rare the marketing head and the sales head in that scenario where the CEO is either certainly allowing it, but maybe even in some weird way encouraging it, it's very, very, very rare for the marketing and sales head to come together just themselves and say, hey, look, come on, we're on the same team. Let's work together. So for me personally, I only work in and only seek and heavily screen for scenarios where there might be that tension. Because where it's there, and if it's already been set up and there's kind of a dynamic in the organization of this, this conflict, it's very difficult to change. And why do I want to insert myself into that? Now, your question though is, it might be a little more, okay, fine. What if people do recognize that that's the situation today, but they want to change it? So there's willingness to change, but the reality is, the behavior's been there. It's kind of systemic. It's like, what do we do? That, actually, on one hand, is relatively easy to deal with. I say on one hand because, look, dynamics are, there's always detail, right? And there's caveats. But the biggest thing that contributes to misalignment of sales and marketing is if you're measuring sales one way, you're measuring marketing in a way that doesn't contribute to how you're measuring sales, you're going to be at odds. So let me illustrate it this way. This is changing a lot, but 3, 4, 5 years ago, the absolute industry standard in B2B was you measured marketing with 2 major data points: MQLs, SQLs, marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads. And there was always, in organizations anyway, that, had existing business and you could do some retrospective analysis, somebody had done some math and modeling and said, hey, look, we convert, this type of lead at this, at this percentage. And, and so therefore, if we generate this many marketing qualified leads, X percent, 25% of those become sales qualified. Of the sales qualified, and it's spreadsheet math, right? So that means if we produce 3,000 MQLs, we should get 750 SQLs, and we're going to close this many deals, and that's how we're going to generate our pipeline, right? The problem is that system where conflict came into the, into the relationship between sales and marketing, is that marketing is able to game those numbers, but sales can't. Mm-hmm. So what do I mean by that? So we have this mythical number, just going with my analogy, 3,000 MQLs a month. So the marketing team, who's, let's say they're bonused on it, or there's some, they clearly have incentive to hit that, gets to the 20th of the month and they only have 1,800 leads. And the head of marketing is going, gang, like we got 10 days, maybe only 6, 7 working days, whatever it is. What are we going to do? Somebody says, well, we got excess budget. What if we just run lead gen on Facebook ads and we get people to download our ebook, and then that'll be our MQL. And then we follow up with a request to book a meeting, and they go, great, do it. So they do it. So guess what? Yeah. People respond to the ad. They download the ebook. They, give them the email address. 0 buyer intent, but it's an MQL. Now this gets thrown over the wall at sales. Some poor BDR, SDR, account executive, whatever, follows up. And even if they get the person on the phone, most of the time, never, the person's like, yeah, I think I download, what's your company name again? And we've all done this, right? And probably at one point had gotten those calls where someone's like, hey, it's Mark from, hey, I just wanted to, if you got a minute, I know you downloaded our ebook, and you're sitting here going, I have no idea who this company is. I don't remember downloading an ebook. And then they talk and you're like, oh yeah, but I never opened it. Right. In other words, it's a complete junk lead Nothing comes out of it. Sales, what I mean by sales can't fake their part is, look, sales can't just manufacture a sale. Like, it wasn't legit.
Right.
But yet marketing goes, hey, we hit our MQLs. We produced 3,100 MQLs last month. Sales, what are you doing? How come you can't close them? Right?
Oh yeah.
And this is why sales and marketing fight. And so how do you fix that? Well, one of the things you do is right at the top, you say, look, we don't care about MQLs. Give us 3,000, give us 30. What we care about is revenue. Next month, we need pipeline of, $2.8, million. Go make that happen.
Yeah.
Now that's and then it becomes collaborative, between the two teams, between marketing and sales. Right. So
no, that's a great example. And I don't think I've heard it put that way, but I love the way you simplified that so that it sits better, because there's so many ways, send the flyers out, whatever. And all of a sudden, look at all the impressions.
The likes.
All the impressions.
Look at all these
Camden,
likes we're getting.
Look at all these impressions, Camden.
There you go.
We joked about this on an episode just the other day, talking about like dogs and marketing. And I was like, yeah, those are in my Verby days doing the virtual events, those are the best ads, are the ones with Lukey and Gumbel in them, because they had a cute dog. Now, some of those people might have been the right demographic, but it's like, no, those are people who were interested in the cute dog. They weren't interested in posting
dog.
It.
Yeah.
Very different.
Exactly. And on like Facebook and the social platforms. And again, it's changed quite a lot, but like 5-6 years ago, you would see this a lot, right? And the internet marketers would hold this up as like, this was their proof that they're a guru, right? Look at this ad that I ran that got 1.35 million likes, or some crazy. And then every time because I was a part of kind of digging into a few, and you'd get to the bottom of it, you'd be like, yeah, it's because, like you said, all the dog lovers clicked on the cute dog. Like, absolutely nobody, zero target market, zero anything. Oh, we forgot to say that part. But anyway, hey, 1.3, wasn't the dog cute? And you're just like, there's no correlation to business. And so that's why kind of bringing the conversation maybe full circle, but just coming back around to, you started out, I thought it was interesting. How do you differentiate yourself, with that question? And to be candid, like even this conversation right here, a lot of consultants even today are not having it, and so they're kind of, because it's a hard conversation, because then the question that's going to follow from a founder is, well, then how do you measure success in marketing? Like, how do we know that you're doing a good job? So then you get into, a whole different discussion. So it's easy to say, oh, we're going to produce, 3,000 MQLs for you. What's an MQL? Oh, it means that somebody has given us their email address and they've checked a little box that says they'd like a call from a sales rep, well, geez, that's super easy to game.
I was going to say, we're talking about gaming things too. It's not even opt into the sales call. That's an opt out. So you already get, 50% of people already.
Yeah. Exactly. So,
oh, gosh.
Man. Yeah. Well, I could tell we could dive into that whole philosophy and that side of how to handle that for another hour. But I'm going to go with what I learned. And I don't think I'd heard the term category design, and I like that. I like that the image that it puts in my mind, as opposed to the niching down, which is a term that's really, it means the same thing, but the category design, and maybe it's the engineer in me that's coming out in that category design. Just I think that really hits home for me in thinking about how do I get it to that total addressable market that will still make me money, but it's only this much. And when they read something that I've posted or see a video that I posted, they say, damn, Otis is talking to me, because we did category design. So that's what I learned. Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
I was just going to add on that because I was thinking the same kind of thing. It reminds me a lot of the term like choice architecture. Like we were talking about like the opt-in, opt-out, like those little tiny things. Of if you could have people who could talk about that in all of these sorts of different ways, but it's like choice architecture is the one that just speaks to my brain, and I feel the same way about category design. Like that just makes sense. I'm with you there, Dad. But no, the other piece for me was, Mark, you said this of there's no technology risk or product risk. Now there's market execution risk. And I love that. And you were kind of like how true it could be or whatever. I love that just as an approach for like brainstorming. My least favorite thing is whenever I have an idea and somebody's like, well, how could you do that? It's like, well, we'll figure out how to do it. I want to know if it's a smart idea to try to figure out how to do it.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Mark, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
Yeah, I think what I learned through this conversation was just more of a reminder of the continuous learning, the importance of continuous learning, and how the things, books we've read, I like that you guys asked me about the books because I've talked about it a little bit, but, like I haven't really thought about what are the those two books that I referenced. That continuous learning is such a critical theme. And it's easy to get away from that. And so what I learned is that as much as, yes, I have all the books behind me. Yes, I've actually read most of them, really a large portion of them. So they're not just there for show. It's like, I have to be honest and say, wow, what books am I in right now? I'm not, it's like, yeah, I'm investing in podcasts, whatever. I need to never stop. This is a continuous journey. And so I don't know if that's learning as much as it is reflection, that I'm now. So, and in fact, I actually do have a couple books I got in not too long ago that I'm going to pick one and say, all right, that's my next one to read. So
there you go. Awesome. Yeah. Mark, how do folks find you, get in touch with you, and most importantly, hire you to help them out with their go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, well, my website is the two ways, actually, my website and then LinkedIn. So I'm sure you'll probably, link up my profile, in the show notes, but I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, just Mark Donnigan. My website is growthstage.marketing. So it's a .marketing domain. So if you just go to growthstage.marketing, and I've got I have some mini books up there. Everything's free, of course. I think some pretty useful information if you're running a B2B startup, or if you're an entrepreneur and just wanting to learn more, or even just get a different perspective on marketing. I don't claim by any means to have all the answers. I think a lot of times it's the different perspective, that helps us get to the right strategy, approach, et cetera. So I encourage, anybody who's looking for that, looking to grow in your go-to-market marketing, come to my website, see if there's something that you'll find helpful.
Awesome.
I was going to say, Dad, we've said it a bunch on the show. The guest who tells you they're not the expert while telling you, come check out all these things, usually the people you want to get the most help from.
Well, awesome. Hey, Mark, we really appreciate your time with us today. It was a lot of fun and extremely informative.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. It was really great being here. Enjoyed the conversation. It was fun.
Awesome. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of the Cam and Otis Show. A special thanks to our guest, Mark Donnigan, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at the Cam and Otis Show. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to share with other lifelong learners in your tribe so they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes is available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.